This is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're back, this time talking about Loki, episode 1.
For the record, this really does feel like a killing me kind of a room.
Not big on trust, are you?
Trust is for children and dogs. There's only one person you can trust.
Yourself? I like it. Slap it on a t-shirt.
If the TVA truly oversees all of time, how have I never heard of you until now?
Because you've never needed to. You've always lived within your set path.
I live within whatever path I choose.
Sure you do.
Welcome back, fellow Defenders. This is TV Podcast Industries. We're back with Marvel on Disney Plus and the brand new series Loki. We're talking about episode 1. I am one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Defenders. I am one of your other hosts, John.
And rounding out this trio of mischievous miscreants, I am Chris.
That's pretty good, Chris. That's a bit of a tongue twister. Well done.
It is. I'm not going to say it again, though. The mischievous miscreants.
You did it again.
There you go. Okay, actually, I could. So I knew I could actually do this quite well. Well, we are bowing down before the God, the Lord of Lies, the God of Mischief, Loki himself.
Absolutely. Welcome back, fellow Defenders. If you haven't been listening to us over the last while since we finished our coverage of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, welcome back. Delighted to have you back with us for another Marvel TV show. We've been covering Star Wars The Bad Batch every week since we finished our coverage of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think we were also still covering Invincible at the time when we finished Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So we have a little bit of a slowing down of podcasts, but we've still done a lot of podcasting since the last time you joined us for a Marvel show.
Yes. So what we're really trying to say is, while you may have had a break from us in your ear holes, we have not stopped. We have continued, much like the MCU, ever forward, ever on, and things like that. But yes, we have not stopped podcasting. I need a holiday.
Ah, don't worry, Chris.
This is my holiday.
Exactly. This is the break. If it is the first time you're hearing us since we did Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that probably means you subscribe to Defenders TV Podcast, where we have all of our Marvel shows. Why not think about subscribing to us on TV Podcast Industries, our main feed, which has all of the podcasts that we do every single week, and you can come and join us for all of our discussions about TV shows. We'd love to have you join us over there. What we'd also love from you, as this series of Loki's going on and the other shows we cover, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love you to email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with your thoughts about any of the shows we're covering, or you can join us over in our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries, where we put up a spoiler post each week for you to put in your thoughts about the episodes as they're airing.
Yes, and as we're in the first of our shows, usually I save this to the end, but why not? Because it is the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you have, why not head on over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries if you like what you hear, because you know what? It helps keep the hamsters running, which help keep the servers going. We feed the hamsters through your beautiful patronage. So head on over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, where just for a single $1, like what we saw flying out of the plane in this episode, you can help keep our hamsters in food, but more importantly, also keep our editors in caffeine, because that keeps them up into the wee hours of the night as he edits away our musings on the MCU. Yes, you can also head on over to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI, where you can just buy Derek a coffee. Thank you.
Absolutely. Feeding our hamsters, or feeding me and feeding me coffee. Definitely. Yes. You can also contribute the exact amount of dollars that were falling out of that plane. That looked like a lot of dollars that were coming out of that plane.
Yes, if you want to, you can give us all the DB cash.
Absolutely. And of course, if not, you can support us by subscribing and sharing the podcast, because sharing the podcast is, of course, sharing the love, yes, which is especially important for Pride Month.
Absolutely. We always love sharing the love in Pride Month. Definitely. Let's get on with our discussion about this episode of Loki. We are recording this a little bit in advance, so we will just be talking about the episode without, unfortunately, any of your feedback. But we do want to hear from you about what you thought about the episode. This episode was written by Michael Waldron, who's the head writer for the show. He wrote one episode of Rick and Morty, and really interestingly, he's also the writer of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. He took over the main writing duties when Sam Raimi took over the director duties for this sequel to Doctor Strange.
Yes, indeed he is. And he is very good friends with Jack Schaefer, and I believe as well just because of Wanda being involved in the Multiverse of Madness, there has been certainly a little bit of chit-chat between them in order that he is carrying on Wanda's story as well from WandaVision.
Excellent.
So,
Yes,
great
Jack Schaefer,
stuff.
the head writer for WandaVision. Yeah, that's
Yes,
really interesting.
And there is quite a lot of timey-wimey stuff going on in this episode. So yes, all very mad and multiversey.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we did see a very prominent Easter egg to a very prominent Strange foe in this episode as well. So who knows?
Yes, absolutely. We're certainly going to be talking about that as we go into the episode. Definitely. When John mentioned this to me about Michael Waldron being a good friend of Jack Schaefer's, I suddenly was going, wait a minute, does that mean we might get Wanda in the show? Could we get Doctor Strange in the show? Could we get Loki going directly into Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness? Of course, that's all really likely if this is the person that's writing the continuing story effectively to tie it all in together. But this episode was directed by Kate Herron. I believe Kate's directing all of the episodes for the show, all 6 episodes. A UK-based director, and directed the second half of series 1 of the excellent show Sex Education, starring Asa Butterfield and Gillian Anderson. A really good show if you haven't got to see it. It's got a good kind of mix of drama and comedy. A little bit more comedy at times.
Definitely.
A kind of comedy of errors, would you say, or awkward comedy a lot?
Yeah, awkward.
Yeah, so
very awkward.
It kind of gives me the feeling with a writer for Rick and Morty and a writer for Sex Education, I feel like during Loki we're going to get a bit more of a comedy TV show than we've seen in the past. A little bit more comedy than we've seen. Probably closer to the Thor side and Guardians of the Galaxy side of the Marvel Universe than, let's say, the Captain America and the Falcon and Winter Soldier side.
100%. Yeah. We are getting the Ragnarok-styled Loki with the kind of Guardian sense, the James Gunn kind of sense of humor.
Maybe, yeah.
In that you can see it already sprinkled throughout this, where we're getting some very serious moments and some very drama-filled emotion, and then an animated cartoon that makes you giggle.
There are some funny bits, and I guess the situation just with some of the devices and that is pretty good as well.
Absolutely.
I have to say. And one of the best slow-mo action or just wobble sequences ever. I did giggle.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for the first episode of Loki season 1?
Sure. Following his battle with the Avengers in New York, Loki, god of mischief, was captured and awaiting transport back to Asgard to be punished for his crimes. But in their search for the Infinity Stones to defeat Thanos in the future, the Avengers travelled back to 2012 to retrieve the Tesseract. Fortunately for Loki, during the time heist, the Tesseract was dropped at his feet, allowing him to escape. Unfortunately, this change in destiny altered the sacred timeline, drawing the attention of the Time Variance Authority. Loki is captured by TVA Hunter B-15 and put on trial for his crimes in front of Juge Ravonna Renslayer. Meanwhile, TVA employee Mobius is investigating a series of murders in the timeline of other TVA agents, the Minutemen. He saves Loki from his trial and explains the work of the Time Variance Authority is to uphold the events deemed sacred by the 3 interdimensional beings known as the Timekeepers. As Loki diverged from this timeline, he's now a variant of the original Loki. Mobius needs Loki's help to capture the murderer as he believes it's another Loki variant travelling through time. If Loki helps end the threat, a meeting with the Timekeepers is on the table.
Very specific wording there from Mobius about the possibility that Loki might get something by helping them out here. I don't think he's going to get anything. I don't think there's any promise made here from Mobius at all if he helps out the TVA. It feels like, what is it that you want? we'll talk about that. You know, like when you want dessert and your mom said to you, wait and see what you'll get. Just eat your dinner first. It feels a little bit like that. This episode had so many introductions to this brand new concept, really, to Marvel. There's been time travel we've seen, obviously, within Avengers Endgame, and this is the first time we're having this introduction to the Time Variance Authority and what that means and these ideas of variance. So lots to talk about, I think, with the first episode. In that vein, we normally have our bullet points or our discussion points for the episode. We're going to call them variants for this season of Loki. So variant 1, our number 1 point. I wanted to just talk about that opening sequence, the connection with Endgame, the literally taking the scene from this multi-billion-dollar movie that was made and put up on screen and using that as your intro to the Loki TV show. What a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And we get the answer to the question, where did Loki go as well, which was quite good. Even though, weirdly, it was Mongolia. It's as good as place as anywhere, I guess. So that was, that's where he kind of went to. Although I thought it was funny that it effectively dropped him about, 1,000 meters above the earth. So he had to come sort of crashing down a bit like a meteor. Must have hurt, I guess. But he has been slapped around by the Hulk a few times, so I think he's probably used to it at this stage.
It's been a tough day for Loki.
But I did like the fact that they literally just kind of took all that footage from Endgame and just kind of wove it in here. I thought it was pretty good. And a nice little setup, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely love it. It was just the overall, the usage, the tie-in. The best way to think about this is they could have taken any Loki point. Like they kind of set it up, obviously, in Endgame. Yeah, we knew it was coming. But they could have done it like 2 years later. Loki has been jumping around the multiverse. Well, sorry, jumping around at this point now, the multiverse, but the timeline.
Yeah.
It's 2 years after his escape, and this has happened. Now it's literally, they got him split seconds later.
Yeah.
So it's still that Loki from 2012, and I adore that.
Yeah.
Because it's the Loki you love to hate. It's the Loki we originally fell in love with.
Yes, it's the original Loki, who's the main antagonist in Avengers. I think I'm just, because we've been podcasting on Marvel now for almost 6 years, with all of the shows on Netflix and all the shows on ABC and now 2 shows on Disney Plus. I think I'm just still not used to them including so much footage from the MCU movies, like, you know, things like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Daredevil and Jessica Jones. There were things like mentions of the attack on New York, and you'd maybe get a little kind of shadowy glimpse of footage from the movies, whereas actually opening your brand new TV show with this 3-minute clip from, as I say, the $1 billion movie that was Avengers Endgame, it felt, wow, we are in the movies now. Like, we are absolutely jumping off from here and going straight into a new TV show directly from the movies.
But it's that nice drop, isn't it? Because, and we'll get to it with one of our other variants, but it's that split in his timeline that he does, that you get to learn about earlier, because of sort of being shown effectively what he's missed from the other movies. And so that's really, really good. And I think with the whole Time Variance Authority and their explanation around time and multiverses, it nicely links to Bruce Banner and the Hulk with the Ancient One from Endgame as well, in terms of how she is describing the change in the timelines on top of the Sanctum Sanctorum. So this is all starting to build this notion of, I'll add to it further on the multiverse, because we get mention of Nexus here, which again, very important from the WandaVision. So it's all building, and connecting really, really nicely. I mean, I know when Feige said these were going to be really connected to the movies, not only is it just simply that they're using footage here in different ways. Here, we got that sort of straight off block of 3 minutes, but you got the you got the footage from different movies in both the previous two as well, with Falcon and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision. Yeah. But it's also just that, it's points in the movies being spun out into the storylines that are connecting to the next set of movies. So it's just really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's get on to that discussion about the TVA and their objectives, the introduction that we have here to the Time Variance Authority as our second variant, because it did strike me, you literally mentioned it there, John, it did strike me that conversation that the Ancient One had with Bruce Banner, or with the Hulk, in Endgame. She talks about this idea of the variant. She talks about the idea of the main timeline splitting off into other timelines, and how terrified she is that her timeline will be completely destroyed by what the Avengers are doing. And that makes you now, after watching this episode of the show, it makes you think that the Ancient One doesn't even know about the TVA at all. Yeah. Loki questions them. Loki says, well, how would I not know about you? I'm a god. I've gone around every place in the universe. Why have I never heard of you guys? And he's told by Mobius, well, you didn't hear about us because you were just stuck on your predestined path along the timeline you're supposed to be going down, and we didn't need to tell you that we were here. So I kind of like this idea that they're the shadowy organization that's in the background fixing things that are, let's say, broken, in inverted commas, according to their timeline.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what we previously had in Marvel is S.H.I.E.L.D., and then we had S.H.I.E.L.D. in space, Sword, and now we have Time S.H.I.E.L.D.
S.H.I.E.L.D. in time.
S.H.I.E.L.D. in time. So there you go. It's just, and that's why you like it. It's a shadowy organization in the back fixing things. Yeah. It's just any type of S.H.I.E.L.D. You're like, I
love shadowy organizations. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not even necessarily shadowy. They're kind of like not that you're getting that they're innately evil in that sense. They're not like Hydra shadowy.
Are you not getting that?
Not necessarily. I mean, to me, this really reminds me of the magic accountancy from the Mark Waid Doctor Strange, the recent Mark Waid Doctor Strange, where you have T. Holstrom, who's doing the accountancy on the price of magic that you got introduced with the Aaron run of The End of Magic. So it feels like that, something kind of almost extra dimensional, somewhere, because we do get to glimpse, I guess, the TVA, or dare I say it, the city or the world that the TVA resides in, unless that is the full TVA, because it has to do so much, because it's for the whole universe, but
the entire timeline and every single person in it.
it's that notion of the bureaucratic behind the scenes office intervening to sort out a mess, and it reminded very much of the Mark Waid sort of magic accountancy aspect, but
which is a really rare, I suppose a lot of people wouldn't know about that idea. And the concept is the same. It's effectively whenever magic is used in the world, in the comic books, there's this authority that are watching over it going, what's the cost of that piece of
what's
magic?
What's the price for the magic?
But in terms of the TVA themselves and their own objectives, we do get that excellent cartoon voiced by Tara Reid, the Miss Minute, who gives the guidance through an animated life cycle of the world, effectively, and what the TVA is for and their objectives, which is, there has been determined that there is one specific sacred timeline that, as long as that's kept, the world or the universe won't spin off into multiple multiverses, which will destroy everybody in it, because that happened, and in kind of, again, in inverted commas, that happened a very long time ago.
Yes, which was corrected and consolidated into this sacred timeline by the three timekeepers. And so then stepping off the path is the Nexus event that could lead to chaos. Or madness, maybe. And you have effectively the TVA agents, these Minutemen, are then enforcing against the variants, bringing them in, correcting that timeline. And then the variants are getting reprogrammed, reset.
Or wiped
or wiped, and going in front of that court, in order to stop the creation of the new timeline and preserve this sacred one. And so, I mean, when we see, Loki, hitting the ground, in Mongolia, that's where we see these Minutemen coming in. You do get literally The best slow-mo hit ever from Hunter B-15, and I just love that. You know, she hits him, and then as his, I've never seen someone's lips and cheeks wobble so much. It was just so funny.
So good.
I love, you know, and you're feeling, you know, this pain in real time, as it's going in slow-mo, and he gets brought then into the TVA for processing,
Absolutely.
basically.
Definitely want to call out Hunter B-15 as well. The actress who plays the role as Wunmi Masaku, who we covered on her show, in her breakout role in Lovecraft Country. Absolutely fantastic in that show, and great to see her in the Marvel Universe. Genuinely looks like she's having fun in every scene as well. Looks like she's really enjoying being in the role as well. So great to see her back.
So, myself and Mr. O'Neill, last night we were discussing the multiverse as a whole, as a concept being introduced more and more and more into the MCU.
Yes.
And I'm doubling down on my discussion point from yesterday, which is I really do think that the big overarching kind of phase 4, phase 5 is the multiverse. Yeah. That is the overall big threat, that it's going to be destroyed. Or like, it's the culmination of how you bring all these different things that they can talk about, like potentially a Miles Morales Spider-Man, or the Fantastic Four, or the Venom, or all the other different weird, the X-Men. It's like how you can theoretically bring everything into one singular universe timeline aspect and have it that the audience can understand.
Yeah.
They are sprinkling multiple seeds. They're planting all these seeds now for this explanation of understanding for the greater audience, so the people who watch Disney plus then over the MCU, people understanding that there is these other universes, these other dimensions, these that are bad.
Yeah.
Not bad because they are evil universes, but those do exist. They are bad because they jeopardize the overall continuity of everything. So Absolutely. The TVA protect it, Doctor Strange protects it, all these things. The Multiverse of Madness will go into this further. Far From Home, Long Way Home, the new Spider-Man will go into this theoretically, rumored. This show of Loki is nothing but the discussion on the multiverse and the variants and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and potentially seeing it for the first time, or at least getting to that sort of threshold of before we take the plunge with Multiverse of Madness into it, I guess.
Because Marvel has pulled the rug out from under us before on this. We had the last Spider-Man movie, which was supposed to have multiverse elements in it, which ended off being a total lie. WandaVision, supposed to have multiverses in it, which also ended off being a lie. And now we're having discussions about a multiverse out there in Loki. The reason Chris mentions this, fellow defenders, is because I completely disagreed with him about the idea that this was going to be the future. So totally laughing when I watched the episode about half an hour after you left last night, Chris, watching the episode going, wow, okay, they are doubling down on this.
Yes, see?
But there's one thing that popped into my head about this whole description of the multiversal war, effectively, this idea that a war happened with all the multiverses which created the TVA. And it popped into my head when that moment happens where Loki looks out over the whole new city. And I'm kind of thinking, well, that looks really futuristic. So that looks like thousands of years further in time. So is the multiversal war they're talking about, is that started in Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, and we have it going on throughout multiple movies and TV shows from now on in our world, in our timeline, kind of 2024, 2025 is when these are all set. And then the TVA is created thousands of years down the line and they come back and fix what the outcome of all of these things. Is that kind of the idea? Or
that they've been around for millions of years fixing it. That happened, that multiversal break happened forever ago, like millennia ago. And now there's another, the Doctor Strange one is a second break, a second multiversal war break.
So my feeling is this is the multiversal break that happened a long time ago, is the one that's coming up in the Marvel universe. That's
Tell me
my
why.
feeling of it. We have no idea.
Well,
but that was my feeling.
Mobius does say time operates differently in the TVA, and I guess he's not just talking about the great sort of neck tag that he uses to rewind Loki very quickly if he is about to attack him or whatever. So like they have these devices that can reset timelines, that can move an individual. So there's all these different things, and the kind of doors that they go through to go into those different times. But and in a sense we see that with the Axon Provence, where there is a dangerous variant that has attacked the Minutemen, where it's back in time in 1549 in a church in France. So it's he's saying time operates differently in the TVA. It could be for that wider kind of city, and so on. So I really like this because, I mean, like, Multiverse of Madness, you have Miss Minute talking about, this split into multiple universes leading to chaos, and potential destruction. All this stuff is synonymous with madness, the chaos, and all that.
Yeah.
And so it could very well be that, the big Nexus event that has shaped it will be the Multiverse of Madness. So actually, that would be really interesting for this, because in effect, Loki is back in time seeing stuff that he hasn't experienced yet, because he's used the Tesseract to move out of his timeline. But they could be, Miss Minute could be explaining something that we haven't seen yet and are about to see in the Multiverse of Madness. So, this is lovely.
Complex. This is complex. I remember when we all watched Endgame, and it took us a little while to get it all together when we were doing the podcast about it. I remember we had to kind of nail exactly what they were talking about when they talked about, at the end of the movie, Captain America traveling back through time to kind of fix everything back to the way it was beforehand. And still, to this day, a lot of Marvel fans, a lot of viewers of those movies are still confused about how that time travel worked. So do you think they accomplished a good job in this episode of explaining it, or do you think it's over heavy on the information dump, or do you think it's really important to get this information dump now with what's coming up in the future?
So personally, I think this whole episode is an exposition. It's Basil exposition. It's an exposition dump. It's everything you need to set up this series of 6 episodes.
It's Basil exposition to the max.
Yes. It's like,
definitely.
it's, they basically, they're introducing, again, we are the target audience, but we're not the final audience. And we have a lot more knowledge and understanding from reading basic comic books. Just the multiverse has been in the comic book staple for hundreds of years. I'm obviously being facetious here, but you understand. Like, since the dawn of comic books, there has been multiverses. No. But in the Marvel and DC, this is a very known and understood thing. And to the point where they've collapsed multiverses into a single universe in the Marvel comic book universe, and then have redone multiverse again. Same with DC. They brought it all into one universe through multiple crises, and then have split them out. So I feel they have successfully explained the TVA and branching timelines from both Endgame and this. Yeah. When taken together, it makes even more sense. When you have our burden of knowledge, it makes even more sense. I think basic understanding. Joe Soap, who comes in and hasn't watched Endgame, multiple other shows, has seen maybe Thor and the Avengers back in the day. And then, I remember that character. I liked him. I'm going to check this out. I think they are going to understand. It's going to be difficult, but I think they're going to be able to grasp the basic tenets of this branching timeline kind of variant thing.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because I think Loki is probably the most breakout character of all of the Marvel movies. There's a lot of people that are fans of Loki, of Tom Hiddleston's performance as Loki, who don't necessarily have any interest in the superhero side of stuff. Yeah. So I think there's going to be quite a few people that will tune into this show not really knowing much about about what's happened since. So I think the episode had a lot to accomplish here. There's the explanation of the TVA, and let's go on to variant number 3, the explanation of all of the stuff that Loki's missed out on by being pulled out of the timeline because he had the opportunity to steal the Tesseract and jump out of his place in New York where he's supposed to be and supposed to be punished. They have to explain all that stuff that happened to Loki, basically.
Yeah, no, I love this because I think even in my own mind, I hadn't actually fully grasped that what we were seeing in Endgame was him missing a load of stuff from Dark World, Ragnarok, and the Thanos attack that he hadn't seen. So, like, and again, it's to Tom Hiddleston's performance, where he's seeing the death of his, I guess, adoptive mother, for the first time, as well as, his father, Odin, and seeing, him experience that with Thor, and also kind of his and Thor's slight reconciliation. Yeah, seeing this all for the first time, and it just that he's thinking this is a trick. He's thinking this is, he's coming at it from himself, in terms of what mischief is going on here. This is a trick. This is a joke being played on me. Until he's grasping, the idea that actually this is stuff, genuine stuff that he's missed. And I think certainly, it's a great little, through thread from, when his mum, talks about, that you understand everyone except yourself. Yeah. You don't understand yourself, and you have Mobius trying to find out from him, and because effectively Mobius has prevented Loki from being reset at the court ruling, to get this dangerous variant. And but Mobius too is looking for, to find out what, and to be honest about what he does and why you do it. And you get some really poignant moments with, all this stuff that is missed from the Dark World that, he inadvertently led to his mother's death. He's seen Odin pass away, and then ultimately as well with Endgame, he's missed Endgame, and he sees his own death.
Everybody saw Endgame. All I need to do is buy a ticket to the cinema.
But I love that he sees his own death because, possibly this is an explanation, to, the dangerous variant of him that that he's trying to prevent his own death. That could, ultimately, because he, we hear him, he wants to rule. It's like what he did when he arrived in Mongolia, immediately got onto the highest point, which was this rock, to try and say, bow down before me, mortal peasants, and worship me. I am the god of mischief.
And I am burdened with a glorious purpose, which is echoed in this scene after he sees everything that happens to him that he hasn't experienced. He echoes it and says, some glorious purpose that I ended off accomplishing. So he's realized all of the stuff that he's been fighting for, all this control he thought he was going to have, all the posturing of being the god of mischief comes out and turns out to be nothing. Because he doesn't ever achieve the goal that he has to become leader. At least in the clips they showed. Because if you do remember, when Thor arrived back to Asgard, he finds Loki has been sitting on the throne for quite a few years. So he actually did lead Asgard for a while.
For a moment, yes.
Yeah, for a while.
Indeed.
Good couple of years. So they didn't show that side of what was going on with Loki, but I don't think that would have been enough for him. Anyway.
I absolutely adored this. Because the question I had was, when you take the 2012 Loki, the Avengers Loki, you are literally missing all that character growth.
Yeah.
And he was a fun villain. He was a greater anti-hero, in my opinion. And I think this is what this will they had to, within theoretically this episode, and they have, I think we'll get on to whether we think they achieved it or not. They've grown the character to a degree, as much as they could, within 60 minutes, 50 minutes, to show, oh, no, look, you are not that Loki anymore. You were this to be this Loki. This is your greater purpose. And I think him tweaking his greater purpose will be on the next episode, things like that. But essentially showing the folly of his ways, like the hoisted by his own petard, if you will, in that he's being like, his greater purpose is not to rule. His greatest purpose is to die and to essentially embolden his brother.
Yeah.
And through not just, so starting in the Dark World.
Yeah.
In the Dark World, he teams with Thor. Then into Ragnarok, where they go on an epic adventure to the ends of the universe and beyond, and destroy Asgard, and then save Asgard. And then they're still, like, it's just all that anti-hero in Loki is the one that everyone loved. That's the reason he got this show.
And isn't it interesting, in this scene, they're effectively saying to Loki, the TVA are saying to Loki, by doing all of this stuff, it doesn't actually amount to what you want it to amount to. So effectively Loki's going, all those plans, all those things that I'm going to do in the future, I have to avoid those, because if I do those, I'm going to end off dead at the hands of Thanos.
Yeah, and he has that break sort of down, I guess, not literally, but he breaks down where, he calls himself the god of mischief, and you've had Mobius kind of pushing him about, well, you're the big metaphor guy, makes you sound smart, smart. Everything he shows him, he starts it off, does Mobius, with, here's your greatest highlights, of which they're all kind of fairly, quite ungreat for him, because they lead to the death of the one person he had that relationship with on Asgard, which was his mother. Yeah. And he ultimately sees his own death and the things that he will miss, like the death of Odin. But he sees Odin saying, I love my sons. That includes him, even though, he was taken from the frost giants. So all of this, and ultimately you have Loki saying, the honesty, I guess, that comes out of him is that the mischief, while, all this stuff that hurts people, he says, I don't like to hurt people. All this mischief, all of this is the trick by the weak, to project, effectively power or control, to protect themselves. So
it's just a side effect of trying to instill fear, is what he says.
So it's that kind of, just that breakdown to realize that his mischief, yes, it's a power. Yeah. But it's because he has, I guess, this weakness, and fear, because he wasn't an Asgardian.
He's like, I don't actually want to kill anybody, but that does happen when you try to make people afraid. Like, Mobius calls him out pretty quickly on that kind of guy. You call yourself the god of mischief. This isn't mischief. This is killing people. It's not mischief. But something that we didn't really talk about on the TVA side of things, it's interesting because they wouldn't consider themselves as heroic. They wouldn't consider themselves as people that want to stop bad people or villains. Simply a good person who doesn't turn up to work on time and changes the timeline will be killed and will be taken out of that timeline and will be punished for going off the path they're supposed to be on. So they are cleansing things that go wrong on the timeline, whether good or bad, whether for positive or negative reasons. They're absolutely with one singular purpose. So they're not heroes here. They're not defenders of anything other than this timeline. I love that Loki calls that out. Similarly to what we saw in Umbrella Academy, with the Time Authority, I think it was in Umbrella Academy, where the people behind this, you have to wonder, are their intentions correct? Is the timeline that they're trying to preserve here, this sacred timeline, why is that timeline the most important timeline that's being protected? And Loki calls that out. He kind of goes, well, who makes that decision? Or will they make that decision? These, three, reptile-looking, aliens, I think is how they're described.
The timekeepers.
Yeah. So do they really have the best interest of, Earth and the universe and the regular galaxy to mind? Is that what's going on? Or are they stopping things and creating a timeline that's best for themselves? And they've created this story. The animated, movie, the one that looked like the Jetsons, that has all this description and all the stuff that's going on. At the end of it, there's kind of a copyright mark, for the TVA. And unfortunately, I didn't write down what it actually says, but it's something like, the information department of the TVA, something like that. And it sounds really like, propaganda department of the TVA. So it makes you think that, yes, of course, this isn't exactly the truth, but it makes you think that it's a created truth that they show to everybody to say, hey, we're the good people, don't worry. But it does seem like they're not good or bad. It looks like they're protecting a timeline, and maybe the people that created that timeline are the villains. And so,
yes, but it's also then the question of, it's the Ancient One again, remember? It's the Ancient One using dark magic to control basically to protect the world and
to keep herself young and
continue to stay. Yeah. So it's like, what evil is necessary in order for the greater good?
Yeah, but what is the greater good? Is the greater good in the best interest of everybody, or is the greater good in the interest of the timekeepers? I'm intrigued if that's part of the storyline for the series itself. Just wanted to move on to Variant 4, which is just a quick mention of the fight between Loki and Hunter B-15 in these scenes, just after he's learnt of his death and everything that's going on. He's lost his glorious purpose. Hunter B-15 comes in to arrest him again, effectively, but I love that they get into a fight, and he does effectively win. He's able to get himself free of his collar, throws the collar around Hunter B-15, and does that hilarious moment when he gets her to jump back and forth through time, I guess.
And speeds it up, and then just go, like, it looks like he's kind of moving around a dial just faster and faster until he just, like, goes wee and flicks it off, and then she doesn't kind of come back, and it's like, where's she gone?
I love how she's coming back in and out. You can hear her going, stop it. It's really funny.
Actually, she flicks to Casey, who's the guy who's kind of on the front desk, who takes the Tesseract off Loki off B-15, Hunter B-15, when she brings Loki in. Yeah. There's a nice little scene with him where Loki has escaped from Mobius because he's gotten that little device that allows him to jump through time within the TVA.
Can I just make a note about that really quickly? That is a device that's supposed to keep Mobius safe, and he keeps leaving it out of his hands' reach. You see him reaching for it twice to stop Loki. He knows who Loki is, but he leaves it out of his hand.
It's like the remote control on the TV, isn't it? I guess.
If you had someone
who puts it in the pocket.
Yeah, if you had someone like the God of Mischief there, you'd definitely keep it close. But yes, he uses that device to get out and go and try and retrieve the Tesseract.
But just with Casey, Loki's looking for the Tesseract to come back to actually then teleport out of the TVA, which he finds he can't do because magic is nullified. Like, I love in the court where he kind of starts to do his big magic sort of build up. Nothing happens, and you've got all the Minutemen just kind of sniggering behind because it's like, this is really funny. But he says to Casey, I'll gut you like a fish, and Casey's there going, what's a fish? Which is really okay. That's a weird reference. But ultimately he gets the gist of it, that, he will die horribly, I think. Loki elaborates on what that metaphor means.
I think Casey explains it later on, saying he says he was going to turn me into a fish and then kill me. So he's close to the intent.
While we're on this, fourth variant, I just want to call out the choice of the different actors for all of them, for Mobius, for Casey, for the Judge. Like, all of these are all good actors, and I know they're probably going to play. They're part of the bureaucracy, so they're going to play core pieces throughout this series. But they're fun. Like, I, hand on heart, am not a fan of Owen Wilson.
I agree. Yeah.
I just never really enjoyed the him and the Vince Vaughn kind of films, Internship, kind of Wedding Crashers, things like that. It's just, I don't know what it is.
You're allowed to not like them. They're not very good. It's okay. But
surprisingly enjoyed him in this episode. Like, him in this episode, B-15, Casey, they all bring this. Either bring a flair, some fun, the inevitable bureaucracy, even Miss Minute, the animated narrator. It all just felt right.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, correct. And it was just good casting. Yeah. And I just, hand on heart, it's the same thing we thought for Flag Smashers. in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's the same thing we thought for WandaVision with like Catherine Hahn as Agatha Harkness. Like, it's just all really well done casting, and I think that just adds so many layers. Even supporting clerk characters, just like Casey. It's just probably didn't need to be the actor who it is, but just because it is him, he can bring that comedic chops to it, and it's just fun. So I just wanted, like, the fight with Hunter B-15 is fantastic. It's well done, and it starts to show the ability of these, using time as a weapon. Like, we get to see the different aspects of using time as a weapon throughout this episode, and it's fun, and that will be playing into multiple fights in the future when Loki has, instead of his 2 daggers, he gets like the 2 batons of time and or 1 baton and a clicker. Like, it's going to, like, you're going to get some very fun, visually appealing fights.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Chris. They really do have a great job with casting on these shows on Marvel. You know, having Gugu Mbatha Raw in the role as the Judge. We are big Doctor Who fans here, so we recognize her as one of the main characters in Doctor Who, the sister of Martha Jones, who was Doctor Who's companion. So we saw her quite a lot on there. So great to see her in a big Marvel TV show as well. Yes, and Casey himself, I was literally, the moment he came on screen and was asking about the Tesseract, I was going, he's really funny. I like his delivery here. So seeing him twice more in the episode, and hopefully a bit more as the office clerk later on in the show, I think he'll be an interesting character to watch. Maybe like Herb from Umbrella Academy, who was a character we got to really like in Umbrella Academy season 2.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Let's get on to our final moment, because we have kind of referenced it a little bit more. Our variant 5, the mission for Loki now is going to find the violent Loki variant.
No, the dangerous Loki variant.
Yes. I say violent because effectively he seems to have killed quite a lot of people.
That is true. That is true. But the alternative is the Pussycat variant, which is the Loki that we see in front of Mobius, which is quite good. But yeah,
he did not like that at all. The reaction from Tom Hiddleston on Tom Hiddleston's face of being called the Pussycat.
No, exactly.
Was fantastic. Yeah.
But the interesting thing with this, with Mobius saying, you know, his kind of deal is that, well, we need your help to track down this dangerous variant. But he does say, because it's another Loki. He thinks it's another Loki. So but I like that there's still the little bit of doubt, but I guess we have, a dangerous Loki in one form or another, or maybe multiple, Lokis here working together. But I wonder if it does come back to a single Loki, because I'm just wondering whether seeing his death, seeing all that, as I said, whether that spurs him to utilize this new situation of a very powerful organization that can manipulate time, and people's and space and people's, fate, and that he, you know, gets that mischievous little spark in his mind. And so it comes back to him using multiple variants of himself.
Maybe that's it. And the thing that this variant Loki, as Mobius is calling him anyway, the thing he's stealing is the reset devices. So he's trying not to get time reset from certain points that the TVA are at. That seems to be part of his plan. I'm just interested in why we didn't see the face. We got hood over this traveling killer. For the 3 times it was in the episode, we had a hood over the head, or we didn't see him in one of the scenes. And the French kid who apparently witnessed the whole thing when questioned by Mobius, points to a stained glass window of the devil, or as it is in the Marvel Universe, Mephisto. Would you really confuse Loki with Mephisto if you'd seen his face? Don't look anything alike. Mephisto's very red. Very unlikely you would confuse Loki with that. So what we're going on, once again, is potentially the unreliable narrator of the TVA telling Loki what they want to tell him, and we're going along with it because that's the only information we have right now. But it could be anybody, and it seems like there is definitely a moment where they're going, It's Mephisto.
Well, it's certainly, it's interesting if it were definitely Loki, a variant of Loki, a dangerous variant of Loki. And the fact that they've got the hood up and the face, just in darkness, you can't see anything. And as well, I think one of the Minutemen is on the floor trying to get out of there, and it's that horror-esque type thing of being pulled very quickly along the floor. So, does that require the strength of a devil? Possibly. Who knows? And
all I really mean is within 10 seconds of this show, we got more reference to actual Mephisto than we did in 9 episodes of WandaVision, which everybody thought was involving Mephisto.
No, exactly. Exactly. But maybe we were just like timekeepers ourselves because we could see the timeline.
Maybe.
And see that Mephisto might be there. It may also not be Mephisto. It could be a whole range of different Lokis. Loki has done a lot of things. He's been the Sorcerer Supreme. We've had female Loki, so there's a lot of Lokis.
Frog Loki.
Yeah.
There was Frog Thor and Frog Loki.
You shouldn't go to France.
Yep.
Isn't that Croaky, Chris?
Yes, Croaky, excuse me.
Sorry, had to get in there with that one.
Well, that's more of a toad.
Anything on the mission, Chris, on the final variant point?
So for me, this is going to be the fun, who is it, for multiple. And I get the feeling they're not going to reveal the hooded character till episode 4, episode 5. It's going to be 2, 3, 4. They're going to keep it down. They're not going to tell us because I think it's going to be a proper reveal. It has to be. But that being said, so there's 2 avenues here. So one is you keep the variant, the hidden evil one hidden. You literally keep them cloaked for multiple episodes. So they are literally the amorphous big bad. They are the Mephisto. They are a devil. They can be anyone or anything. Because as soon as you take down the cloak, you reveal who it is. Yeah. So the suspense is gone. You have literally, it's that kind of, it's Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah.
And you build it up to the audience that it's just Tom Hiddleston, so we don't need to reveal his face. You know what Tom Hiddleston looks like. You know exactly what his Loki looks like. And it could be anything actually under the hood.
Some variant of Loki, which could be really interesting.
Could be played by a completely different actor,
And you said hooded man. I immediately thought of Robin Hood.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And you could literally have a scarred Loki who's been destroyed and disheveled by Thor and is angered.
Maybe. Yeah.
You could have, as you said, the female Loki who is in the comic books. Mm-hmm. You have the frogged Thor Loki. You could have a devil Loki.
Now, I know a silhouette of a frog, and that didn't look like a frog.
No, but you could have a lizard Loki,
Unless
lizard man
Loki.
Turned
into a prince. Maybe it had already had
He's had his kiss. Yeah. There you go. No, but that's the thing. As soon as they reveal that cloak, then the path is set. So as of right now, he is both nothing and everything. That is the fun part.
It could have been a Pussycat Doll variant that has gone dangerous.
A Pussycat Doll variant?
Yeah, instead of a Pussycat variant, Pussycat Doll variant, who has now gone massively dangerous.
Interesting.
But I love the fact they keep it cloaked. Anyway, that is the point, is that I love, like you say, Chris, they've kept it cloaked, and there's multiple avenues from that that can happen, and it's really good. But like you say, it seems to be the taking of the reset device that resets the timeline in that place at that time.
And it takes it before it's been reset,
Although, the one thing just on that is when Mobius is in the church in Aix-en-Provence, they then put a reset device down and activate it. So does that clear it? Or is it just clears it from before? So, I mean, I guess wherever this has happened, then they can clear it as long as they go there. If they don't know it's happened, then they can't. So the devices could be being used to reset something else.
Exactly.
Which could be, obviously, his own death.
Or if you get enough of the reset devices, you bundle them all together to create a nuke. Can you destroy
a time nuke?
A time nuke? Can you destroy the main prime timeline and fracture it into multiple?
Excellent. Loads and loads of questions that will hopefully all be answered throughout the series of Loki. You guys got any notes about the episode? Anything we haven't talked about yet?
I've got a couple. First on, can I get some Infinity Stone paperweights?
I know.
Yeah.
They were cool.
Like
They were cool.
Yeah, that moment when Loki sees all of these Infinity Stones, which were so important for 22 movies in the Marvel Universe, and he's kind of going, hang on a second, you've just got these sitting around here.
Yeah.
The lads just use them as paperweights.
And even they don't work in
Exactly.
the TVA.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's got a good old sort of energy center to whatever force field it's creating out of that.
For me, that was fun because essentially it's saying that the Time Variance Authority is more powerful than the Infinity Stones. And you get that by opening a drawer.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm also going to quickly talk about the old DB Cooper scene.
Yes, this was
Because
kind of interesting.
this is hilarious. So, I'll jump two things. First, they have played up this scene in the trailers for multiple times, and it was led to believe, or we were all kind of led through the trailers and through kind of discussions that this was going to be a big scene and it was like a mission or something. No. Loki turning out to be DB Cooper, who I'll go into in a second, is a joke. It was literally a bet by Heimdall and Thor that he lost, and he was told to. And I'm like, that's fantastic. Like,
That is pretty
just,
cool. Yeah.
it was a fun way, it was a fun throwaway thing.
Yeah.
For our listeners who do not understand, and again, Derek, you didn't know who DB Cooper was until I started talking about it.
I had no idea. I only knew because Chris mentioned it in January and laughing away about the idea that that would be involved in the TV show Loki, and I was going, I have no idea who DB Cooper is. So Chris, who was DB Cooper?
Okay, so DB Cooper is the media pseudonym of Dan Cooper. And back it's about 45 years ago, more.
Who was Dan Cooper?
Dan Cooper hijacked, in 1971, hijacked a Boeing 727. Mm-hmm. So essentially, the story is, it's exactly pretty much as Loki plays out. Yeah. He, way through a flight, he essentially, called the air hostess over, gave her a note that basically said, I have a bomb. I want you to land, get all this money, take off again, and get rid of the passengers. And essentially, so that's what's happened. They landed, he got the money, they took back up, along with the two pilots and two of the air hostesses. Dan Cooper essentially put on a parachute and sent the two air hostesses up to the front of the cabin with the pilots. And at some point over the second flight, over the Rocky Mountains, or I think it was the Rocky Mountains, somewhere in the US, he essentially jumped out. They don't know where he landed. He's never been found. They've never figured out who he is. He got a crazy amount of money, but no one knows who he is. It was
now we do. It was Loki.
Yeah, now we know it was Loki, and it was fun because they found, they think they found parts of the money buried, but they're not sure. It's this ever evolving, ongoing American kind of mythology of who people think he might have been a paratrooper. Some people think that he was a terrorist. Some people think that he was CIA, and it was actually all a big front to get Black Ops money.
Excellent. And now we know it's Loki, so we know that mystery has now been solved. Excellent. Thanks for that,
Mischief
Chris.
was managed.
Exactly. John, any notes from yourself?
Yeah, so it's just the three timekeepers. We don't get their names. It's just that they're space lizards, but their names are Ast, Vorth, and Xanth. So I guess we might hear that at some point. But the Time Variance Authority, which was established in a Thor in the 1980s, issue 372, that paid homage, which is really a nice thing, to a long-time Marvel writer and editor, but also continuity expert of Mark Grunwald. So all the members of the bureaucracy in the TVA were clones of Mark Grunwald by the creators, Walt Simonson and Sal Buscema. So, That's really kind of a nice little salute to, I guess, one of the main continuity experts for the comics in this TVA.
I think that's really funny, isn't it? You can see all the writers getting together and going, "This would be hilarious." You know, Mark always tells us we can't do what we want to do because it has to fit into the timeline. It has to be part of canon. Let's make him this evil TVA in the comic books that makes sure everybody sticks to the canon.
Exactly.
That's hilarious.
And then there's also just a very brief reference to a nightmare department in the TVA. So again, possible references to Nightmare and having to deal with his mischief as well in the dream world, potentially. And that kind of made me think whether the magic accountancy could be in the same kind of place. You know, this kind of just slightly outside of time and space, I guess, in this fairly static thing. So
entirely possible. Just to mention, if you haven't listened to our podcast before, John is our resident Doctor Strange fan, as you may or may not know.
I think they know by this point.
Is one of the biggest Doctor Strange villains and was supposed to be the original villain for Doctor Strange 2 until they changed it all up and turned it into the Multiverse of Madness. So any reference to nightmares or Nightmare will have a little connection to that particular villain for John, I'd say.
Yes, absolutely.
Every time I have a nightmare and wake up in the middle of the night, John goes, "Oh, that's supposed to be in Doctor Strange 2. There you go. Guys, I think that's it for notes and for the discussion of the episode. Mischief managed, as Chris said. Do you defend the season premiere of Loki? Chris?
Yep. I'm actually quite satisfied with what we were given, for multiple reasons. Core being, it dragged in parts, but they managed successfully, in my opinion, to essentially do 22 films worth of character growth. Well, obviously 22 films. So all the films that the Loki was in, the whole first couple of phases of character growth, and the explanation of what the Time Variance Authority is, what multiverses are, what variants are. And they managed, in my opinion, to explain 99% of that well. And get the growth of Loki going from the villain of the Avengers 1 to becoming the actual, to becoming the anti-hero near, or at least be on the path to becoming that anti-hero that we loved from Ragnarok and Infinity War. Yeah, so I completely defend.
Excellent. John, how about yourself? Do you defend this episode of Loki?
I do. I really defend this episode of Loki. I'd give it 4.5 pussycat variants out of 5. I just really liked Tom Hiddleston keeping his portrayal of Loki alive here, connecting it both, forwards and backwards and around in circles and up, down, roundabout, whatever, to the Marvel universe. This is really a connected universe when you see it like this. And I think how Tom Hiddleston portrayed that, the idea of seeing the stuff that he hasn't experienced because he's been plucked, using the Tesseract out of that timeline, from 2012, was really, really good. It connecting to Dark World, and all of that I thought was really good. There's this massive intrigue just around the Timekeepers and the TVA anyway, about are they good or bad, as you say, or are they just simply this neutral protection of a particular timeline for whatever reason, and whether that in itself may be good or bad. And just the, who is the hooded man there? Is it as simple as Agent Mobius suggests, that this dangerous variant killing the Minutemen from the TVA, is that simply a dangerous version or variant of Loki? Is it maybe someone else, as we see the devil stained glass window in the church? I wonder why the church actually possibly commissioned a devil stained glass window, but I guess they do have to show the yin and the yang side.
No, it's very likely that you would have it in that particular position as well, because it looks like a place that you would go to worship the devil, because you don't put a stained glass window.
Maybe it was a bad
happy-looking
church.
devil. Normally you would put the devil killing people, if you were doing a painting of him or something like that.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, the fun stuff as well, like Chris with the saying about DB Cooper, just that fun little bit in amongst, you know, some fairly sort of deep stuff for Loki there with the death of his mum. Mm-hmm. The slow-mo hit at the start between, from Hunter B-15, the sort of getting her back with the time tag around her neck by Loki. Some real fun little stuff in here as well, and with Casey.
Yeah.
So I just thought this had kind of pretty much everything, actually. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So absolutely do defend this episode of Loki. Derek, do you defend this episode?
Yeah, there was one really interesting thing that we didn't even mention from the bits that were being played back to Loki. He's shown the death of Phil Coulson and told that was the reason that the Avengers kind of got together, was because he killed Phil Coulson. I really was expecting Mobius to go, and it didn't even work. Phil Coulson lived for another 9 years and set up another version of S.H.I.E.L.D. You know, I was really expecting them to actually roll back Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. back
really
into
crush
the MCU.
his power sort of
exactly.
trick. Yeah.
Exactly. I really thought they were going to do that, but seeing Phil Coulson back in the MCU, even though it was just a flashback and to include the character, I thought it was really cool. I really liked that. Overall episode, I think, was done really, really well. They did a great job of getting everybody up to speed. It's an opening episode, but I think there was enough of interest in the episode to make you excited for next week's one. So that's all I was looking for from the first episode. Probably a lot of information being stuck in there so that we can get ready for next week's episode. I think there's so many questions around who the TVA are and what they're actually trying to accomplish that I think will work really well for this kind of mystery comedy series for the next 6 episodes.
Yeah, and just also another thing we didn't mention was the great signed declaration of everything they'd ever said when he was getting processed right at the start, where there's 2 new sheets being added, classic, and whether he was a robot or not, and how would he know?
Yeah.
And I loved the whole Delhi counter judgment, where it was like, even though there were just the 2 there, Loki and the other guy, it was like, take the ticket for the Delhi judgment, effectively.
Yeah. The other guy that was in that room, did you notice when Loki arrived originally, there was a scroll standing waiting to be processed, and then when the camera turned around, the scroll was gone, and it was that guy, the guy that was disintegrated for not having a ticket. He was the one that was there. And I was trying to work out whether that was just a weird edit, or was it supposed to be many more people in the room, and the next edit was just the 2 of them, or had the scroll just walked away after being processed? But it just seemed weird that they had a scroll in full makeup in a scene for about 2 or 3 seconds, and then never seen again in the episode. I just thought it was a bit odd, but there was a scroll there in the episode. Maybe that'll be something that we can check every episode, how many scrolls appear in all the episodes. But we are returning to Marvel, as you know, for these episodes, which also means we're returning to our pub quiz questions. If you've joined us before for a pub quiz, or if you've not, the details basically are John will ask a question each episode of Loki, and at the end of the episodes, at the end of 6 episodes, add all of your answers together, all 6 answers together. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with your answers, and you'll be in the chance of getting some Loki goodies from us for getting all the questions right.
Absolutely. And dare I say it, we have returned to our sacred watering hole, and we are the 3 booze keepers that retain the purity of the tipple that you can enjoy as you listen to our dulcet tones discussing everything about Loki. But yes, the pub quiz returns, and of course, send in your answers to all the questions to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, as Derek has already mentioned. Just reiterating, you can send them all in one go, or as we go through the episodes of this 6-episode series.
Excellent. What's the question, John?
The question is, what speed is Loki moving at after being clobbered by the TVA agent Hunter B-15 in the Gobi Desert?
Ooh, interesting.
Do you know your record players, I guess, is the question.
Oh, okay. That's a really interesting clue. I would just say, what's the start of the episode again? You'll get that pretty quickly. Do you want to repeat the question one more time?
Yes, the question is, what speed is Loki moving at after being clobbered by the TVA agent Hunter B-15 in the Gobi Desert?
Excellent, yes.
Whilst he experiences, dare I say it, the absolute pain of that hit in real time.
Yes, really like that. Thanks, John. And thanks to everybody for listening. As Chris mentioned at the opening of the show, you can support us over on Patreon for any amount each month. Just pop over there to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries if you'd like to support us over there. If you want to just support us with a one-off amount, you could also pop over to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI and buy us a coffee. It always helps us out. And we want to say a huge thank you, of course, to everybody that's been supporting us over on Patreon and on Buy Me a Coffee. And most recently, we've had a few additional joiners over on Patreon. We've had 084, Alex Baelish, John Daniel, and James Figuer. Thank you so much for all of your support over the last couple of months. I'm hoping you're enjoying the content that we're putting out from TVPI. Every penny that you send through to us on Patreon allows us to afford to put out as many podcasts as we do on a monthly basis. So thanks so much for all of your support, guys.
Yes, thanks so much to our patrons. Really great to have your support. And to our baristas as well over on Buy Me a Coffee. It's great to, that caffeine hit is really, really good.
It's really necessary.
Yes, thank you so much, guys. Look, we really appreciate it. I joke, I kid a lot about pretty much every time we talk about it. But we really do appreciate it. We really do. It does actually help with the edit. It keeps our servers up, all the little admin-y things. Mm-hmm. And it is a good thing. It allowed me to kind of refactor and upgrade the memory on my computer in order to podcast better and less crashes, because back in the day, about 6 months to a year ago, my computer would crash during recordings at least twice.
Yep.
It was not good.
Not good.
But with a small bit of an SSD, we fixed it.
Yes.
Exactly.
And for the avoidance of doubt, no hamsters were harmed during the making of this podcast.
Yes,
of course.
Yeah, it's not over yet. But thank you guys so much for supporting us over on Patreon or on Buy Me a Coffee. You don't have to support us with money. If you want to support us in another way, you can support us by subscribing to the podcast and sharing it with your friends, because remember, sharing the podcast is sharing the love.
Ooh.
And of course, we would love to hear your thoughts about this series of Loki. You can email us through feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Come on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. We're over on Twitter at TV Pod Industries, and you can also record your thoughts in a voice message and email it to us at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or go to our website, tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can record a voicemail for us over on the tab on the right hand side of the screen for any of the thoughts, comments, theories, chit-chat, feedback on this series of Loki. It should be good stuff with
Absolutely.
What we've seen from this first episode.
Yep, this is just the beginning of Loki, the Loki podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We will be back later this week with our discussion about Star Wars The Bad Batch Episode 7, as we continue to discuss The Bad Batch every week. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back next week with Loki Episode 2, and of course, hopefully, your feedback.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. It is just the beginning of our delving into the mysterious time, multiverse, madness, variance, and everything in between. But we will restore order by the end of the next 5 episodes. So thank you so much, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much as always, fellow defenders, for listening to the discussion that we have on Loki and all our podcasts in general. We can't wait to speak to you again. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep defending. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.